Coming to you live from our studios in Elmwood Park, New Jersey. This is Landscape Live, featuring some of the biggest names in the green industry. If you are a landscape design build contractor, landscape maintenance professional, or landscape designer, this is the show for you. Now, here is your host, Jody the Spin Dr. Chelan, and his lovely co-host, Gail Wolcott.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Landscape Live. We'd like to thank you for joining us, and we have a very great show. It's horrible.
An
excellent show for you. Our special guest tonight is Richard McCoy of Richard McCoy Horticultural Services, and the title of tonight's show is Organic Landcare and Proper Planting. If you've been on my website, FromDesignToBuild.com, I've written about this before, that unfortunately, even in 2014, our industry still does not know the proper way to install plant material. So Richard is going to help reinforce that message to all of the landscape contractors that are out there. It's really, the ideas are very important for us as far as having the plants surviving, or not only surviving, but thriving as well. So Richard will discuss problems associated with improper planting and over mulching, or mulch volcanoes as we call it here in New Jersey. I'm not sure what you guys call it in other parts of the country or outside of the U.S. And we're also going to talk about organic land care. So I'd like to, I don't have to hand the mic over to Gail, but I'd like to say hello to Gail, who's going to talk about our sponsor.
Hello, Jody.
Hello, Gail.
How are you today?
Good. We're trying to get used to the fact that we're now in the same studio and not in separate rooms, so it's a
little weird.
It's a little weird, but we'll get used to it.
So, tonight we would like to thank this month's sponsor, Quality Pro, for their support. If you'd like to email us your questions, comments, or suggestions to info@fd2b.com. What happened here?
What?
If you'd like to, please email us your questions, comments, or suggestions to info@fd2b.com, or you can tweet your ideas using hashtag #LandscapeLive. To hear the show again, or any of our previous broadcasts, you can visit FromDesignToBuild.com, LandscapeManagement.net, or iTunes. Thank you and enjoy tonight's show.
All right. Just to tell you a little bit about Richard before we give him a call, he is the visionary behind Richard McCoy Horticultural Services. In 2013, he became one of the first 27 original graduates of the Rutgers Organic Land Care Certificate Program. He has been a featured speaker at many organic lawn and land care seminars for garden clubs throughout New Jersey, as well at Rutgers University. Currently, Richard is a member of the Rutgers Cooperative Extension Organic Land Care Working Group to form New Jersey's state standards for organic land care and assist in the coordination of the 5-day Organic Land Care Certificate Program. So I'd like to introduce tonight's special guest, Richard McCoy, and we're just going to give him a call and get him on the air.
Hello.
Hey, Richard, it's Jody and Gail. How are you?
Good, guys. How you doing?
Good. We're live on the air, so...
Great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on your show.
No, we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and find out more about organic land care, and also discuss which, a chronic problem in our industry is, improper planting. So to give some ideas and guidelines to help contractors, get a better idea of some things that they should be doing or things that they shouldn't be doing. So why don't we get started? Are you at Rutgers currently right now?
No, not at Rutgers now.
Okay.
I'm involved with the working group, the Organic Land Care Working Group.
Mm-hmm.
So we get together. We try to get together once a month. It's been a while since we've gotten to our had a meeting, but we're currently working on a best management practices for organic Landcare for the state of New Jersey, and hopefully with the goal being that the New Jersey Organic Landcare Association that we put together will hopefully take those best management practices and put them into a standards for an organic Landcare standards for the state. That's our hope with that.
So let me ask you, Richard. I mean, the radio show goes, it's on the internet, so we pretty much go throughout the country or throughout the world. We're on 6 continents. Is this something, I mean, you're working specifically for New Jersey, but are there other organic land care groups or that you're working with or developing similar protocol?
The best management practices that we're working on are sort of everything. They all sort of come from the National Organic Program. Everything sort of takes that basis of the NLP, which is the USDA Farming Organic Standard, and they're built off of that. Like there's NOFA, there's NOFA New Jersey and NOFA, the Northeastern Farming Association. There's Oregon Tilth. There's another group called SOL. So there's a bunch of groups, and they all have their independent standards. And it'd be nice to think one day that there would be a standard for the United States, at least the United States, for the Northeast, and to build on some sort of to have some sort of standard for the whole group that organic land care could sort of build off of, instead of having independent groups with their own standards. I think that would be the ultimate goal.
Well, I guess then, with the different soils and, different parts of, let's just say the U.S., so there would have to be some, I guess, basic standards, and then, really each state would develop something off of that, I guess, original platform. So, no, that's great. It's great that you're doing it for the state, and then, it's exciting that, it may be something that could be, nationwide.
That's what we're hoping. I've spoken to some of the people in NOFA, and I know that there's been some talk of trying to put together a national standard. So there's people talking about it. It's just a matter of getting it actually to happen. So see what happens with that.
So Richard, for those of us not too familiar with it, what is organic land care?
Organic land care is it's a holistic approach or ecological approach to landscaping. What we do in organic land care is we take all the living things that are in a landscape, from the soil biology, the microorganisms organisms that are living in the soil, and nurture them so they're making the nutrients available for the plant material that we're planting. The great thing about that is when you do take a holistic approach, or use organic land care as a landscape practice, you can minimize the use of synthetic chemicals, and the nice thing about that is when you do things organically, it builds up the natural defenses in the plant material without using a synthetic, which would bypass those natural defenses and sort of give it weaken the plant in the end and leave it susceptible to pests and diseases and things of that nature. The other thing about it too is there's like I said, we take all living things into account, and that trees, plants, turf, planting native plants, going in and identifying in initial site planning phases, identifying invasive species, and trying to remove them as practical, and replacing them with native plant material to hopefully get some of the beneficials back and the natural pollinators and native pollinators that are in the area.
So with this approach, I would assume that the very first step is, doing a soil test or soil analysis to see what you're working with.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it. You can't just take organic land. It seems to me like when anybody starts to talk about organic land care, it sort of goes right to organic turf management. Right. Right, and that's a little bothersome for me because organic turf is part of it. But like you said, the initial site analysis, doing soil tests, perk tests, different kinds of soil tests, doing not just a pH test or things like that, but doing a soil biology test, doing full bioassays to see what kind of bacteria and fungi and things like that that are in the soil, so you can actually incorporate compost teas and compost and things like that to boost up the beneficial organisms that are in the soil. So and that's just part of it. I mean, the way I sort of look at it is, there's three layers. There's sort of the site planning, then a planting phase, and then a maintenance phase of organic land care. And under those three items, they break down into other individual items in those groups.
Okay, and it's clearly it's not a one-step process. You do your analysis, site analysis, the soils, perk tests, and then add what you need to, and then you're done. There's a continual process that does go along with it, whether it's adding more, I guess, compost tea you mentioned, or other organic solutions.
Yeah, there's if I could, I actually just wrote an article for a magazine. It's Organic Gardens Today magazine. It's an online internet magazine, and it's basically about the title of it is "What is Organic Land Care?" and it sort of breaks down what organic land care is and how the professionals sort of take the approach to manage landscapes organically. I think it would be a good jumping point for somebody who's interested in it to sort of take a look at it, and get an idea of what it actually is, instead of just thinking, it's organic turf and it stops there. I'm not, the term organic land care is not one that I'm fond of, because it is more of an ecological approach. I think the term organic land care, just people recognize it, that people are going to recognize the term much more than they will organic, much more than they will the term ecological. So I think by wherever the name actually came from, I think that, the organic is a hot button. People are going to recognize it, and that's why it's sort of just stuck with organic land care instead of, like an ecological land care. So I think that's sort of where that came from.
So do you just think that turf grass has just kind of gotten the message out there, faster, or just, I guess it's, I don't know if it's more of a media concern, but they basically marketed it better than the total land care, and this is, we have to just catch up to it to have, I guess, an all-inclusive organic solution?
Yeah, I think it's easier, because everybody's out cutting their grass on a Saturday or Sunday. They're out, whether they're trying to do organic on their own properties, or if they're out going to the big box and getting their 5-step program. Everybody's out there dealing with their lawn every weekend. So a lot more so than actual, getting into gardens and gardening and worrying about native plants and things like that. You have that static sort of cookie-cutter landscape that most people have, with the sheared boxwood and sheared berberis and things of that nature that everybody sees and everybody wants, which is sort of unfortunate, which we're obviously trying to get away from as far as we can. And still have landscapes look good, obviously. I mean, you can incorporate native plants into a landscape and have boxwoods and things like that. And you just don't shear them so tight. And, just keep things a little loose and not as formal. I mean, which you can do formal gardening also too in organics. It's not just limited to sort of a wild, natural look. You can have formal gardens also.
Sure. Actually, it's interesting. There's such a disconnect between, even in our industry, between design, build, and maintenance, where, as a designer, landscape architect, you're designing, with shrub masses so that they grow together. And on the maintenance side, as you said, they're pruning everything. They're keeping the forsythias separate. The barberries all look like cubes. And, it's I mean, I've been in the industry for almost 40 years, and it really hasn't changed all that much, that'll be another show, a discussion for another show.
That's another couple topics, right?
So let me ask you, or why don't you tell us what you do at Richard McCoy Horticultural Services?
Okay. Well, I've been, did you say you were in the industry for 40 years?
40.
40, wow. Okay. Well, I've been in it for 30, so we're running neck and neck. But I've been in the industry for 30 years and had my business, Richard McCoy Horticultural Services, for 20. And just I was an arborist before that, and just sort of fell into the landscape industry. I've always liked being around plants and working with plants. Then about 10 years ago, we decided to switch to a completely organic program, which as far as the plant material and design side of it, it wasn't that difficult to do and maintenance of gardens also, because I had always sort of cautioned on the side of using synthetic chemicals and pesticides and fungicides, and always sort of worked with the soil aiding compost, not really knowing why at the time, knowing that it was good for the soil, but not really understanding why up until I started, doing things organically. So the design sort of maintenance thing wasn't that tough for us to switch over to. However, the turf management was a completely different animal. I just sort of figured that, we're doing all this great organic work in our garden beds and around the properties, and we're having third parties come in and do applications of synthetics on the turf. And somebody came to me on the property and said to me at one point, you should just try doing it organically. And like 10 years ago, when it really started to people started talking about it, my first reaction was, well, it's too expensive and it doesn't work. Why would I do it? So that winter, I really sort of dove in, and I went to a bunch of MILFA conferences and did a lot of research. And the following spring, we just sort of jumped into the deep end of the pool and started doing things organically, turf-wise, and scrub applications and things like that. So, and never looked back. And our properties, I think our properties would stand up better, at least equal, or if not better, in some instances than some of the conventionally maintained properties. I think, one of the things I try to do in our designs is, it seems like you drive through these neighborhoods and everybody's got this competition of who has the best, or, the most amount of mulch on their property. And, one of the things I try to do is eliminate bed areas eliminate turf areas and plant more plant material. Now, I don't mean just pile in a bunch of plant material on top of each other. Plant things that will sort of grow in harmony with each other so that they can spread out as ground covers, shrub layer and understory and things like that, so that they sort of blend together and work together instead of just sort of growing in a big mass. The less I have properties that we mulch every other year, only because we have so much plant material, perennial ground covers and shrubs, like I mentioned, that we don't need to. The weed pressure is not bad because once all the perennials come in, there's no sunlight getting to the soil for any weeds to germinate. So we may just do a compost top dress, or like I said, mulch every other year, and just touch up in years where we may need to mulch, and just touch up along the areas where the things might be bare a little bit. But that's it's been, like I said, it's been 20 years and 10 organic, and it's been, the 10 years of organic has been the best 10 years of my business for a bunch of reasons. I sort of just started getting stagnant with the way we're doing things, and when I started doing things organically, it sort of opened my eyes up to a whole other world of what's going on out there in the landscape. So it's been great for our business.
Well, it's also, that's fantastic, and it's also what people want. I mean, now that they're even more aware of what we're doing to the planet and are finally getting involved on their own properties, it's really the direction that really we're going, as far as getting away from, like you said, synthetics and going towards organics. We're going to take a break for about 30 seconds, and we're going to get to a commercial from our sponsor, QualiPro, and then we'll be right back with you, Richard.
QualiPro is proud to sponsor Landscape Live. QualiPro is a manufacturer of proven products for the commercial, turf, ornamental, and landscape industries. We have an extremely broad line of unique products and cost-effective solutions. See our ads in Landscape Management Magazine or visit us online at quali-pro.com.
Okay, thank you again to QualiPro for sponsoring this month's series of episodes, radio shows at Landscape Live. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Richard McCoy of Richard McCoy Horticultural Services, and we're talking about organic Landcare and proper planting. So we were just talking a little bit about design, mulching, and things along that. Gail, you had a question for Richard?
Yeah. What is your company's actually planting protocol?
Planting?
The protocol for planting?
Yeah.
Question? Yeah. Well, what we generally do is, part of the problem now you see with all the mulch volcanoes and things like that is, a lot of guys will just take B&B plant from the nursery, and just specifically speaking about B&B material. Take it from the nursery, put it in the ground, and put some soil and mulch on it and walk away. I'm not saying everybody does that, but I'm sure there are guys out there that do it. So what we do is we'll get, I personally go down to the nurseries to pick out the plant material for our company. I don't let a nursery pick it for me. I go down and get it. So I know that I'm getting a quality plant to begin with. And then what we'll do is we'll get the plant material for the site, and we'll do what we call a cursory root collar excavation, where we'll take the top portion of the burlap and twine off of the plant, and we'll take whatever loose soil is sitting on top of the plant to get down to the root flare off of the top of the root ball. Then what we'll do is we tie it. It sounds like it's a real labor intensive, but we've got it dialed in pretty well. We can do it pretty quickly. And then what we'll do is we'll take the cage, tie the cage back up so we still have some support to the plant. And once we get it near the hole, we'll cut the bottom of the cage off, the wire basket off, take the bottom of the burlap off, get it in the hole, get some soil around it to stabilize it, and then we'll take the rest of the cage and the rest of the burlap off of the plant altogether. We're adding mycorrhizae to the plant material when we plant, a little bit of compost, and some organic fertilizers when we plant. And we have great success with that. I have very little plant loss. I mean, very, very few times I have to go back due to our planting to have to replace something like this past winter. We had to, because this winter we had to replace some things. It was so cold, but that's not our planting practices that call it that. And with that, the confidence that we have with our planting protocols, I don't know how many guys offer a 2-year guarantee on the plants, but I have no problem doing that. That's sort of our, a claim. One of our claims is that we can plant things and not have them die. So I could guarantee it for 3, I can guarantee it for 15 years, but our stuff just doesn't die. I mean, I think we do a really good job planting it. So.
I want to just comment on the one thing. You're scaring me a little bit when we were talking about the galvanized wire basket, and I've had this debate with so many contractors who think that you can keep the wire basket on. When you were talking about we cut it, I was waiting for you to say we leave it or tie it back up, but I want everyone who just listened to that description that is perfect. I never even thought about that. I never even saw anyone do it, because that's one of the arguments is once you lose the basket, the soil does become or can become a little unstable depending on how the plant was handled or what soil it's grown in. So you actually so you cut away the basket, you cut away the burlap, then you actually plant it and then remove the top part of the cage or basket and the top of the burlap, so you're keeping the ball intact pretty much the whole time you're installing the plant.
Yep. And if you think about it too, plenty of times you may order something that's bare root from a nursery, mail order, and you'll plant, whether it be roses or whatever, and you put it in the ground and you make it, the soil and whatever amendments you have, you make a slurry out of it, and the soil is all nice and wet, and it gets in those little nooks and crannies where the problem is when the root ball falls apart, it creates air pockets. So I'm not saying that the root balls always stay together, but when they fall apart, you just have to, you have to really soak the hole, right? So if you soak the hole and all the soil and whatever amendments you have, and you just take the trunk of the tree and you wiggle it around a little bit till the air bubbles come out, then you're essentially, if it's a bare root plant, you stake it and you're fine. I've had that happen before where I put trees in the ground and root ball has fallen apart. But, you just water the heck out of it and, like I said, get all the air pockets out, and it does just fine. I have a lot of photographs and a lot of images of wire baskets that have girdled roots, underground that you can't see, which is something that we also do is the root collar excavation and things like that for plant material that's already established. That's a pretty cool thing to do too.
Yeah, and I'd like to, just get a few minutes in on that as well. Just one question about the watering. I think a lot of companies, I know when I was younger and first in the business, that contractors watered in the plants, as they were backfilling it for exactly the reasons, they didn't just throw the soil in, a couple of, stamp on it a little bit with their foot, and then go on to the next thing. You actually need to water them in for the reasons that you just said, not compact the soil, but lose the air pocket. So is that something you still do as part of your installation process?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everything we put in water then. I mean, I don't need, my crews don't leave a job site for planting before things are watered in completely.
You're one of the 10%ers.
Yeah.
I don't know if people forget or they just, everyone's just there to just move so quickly, but that's why your plants are surviving and other companies aren't, because you're taking the time to do it right.
Yeah, I mean, you have to move quickly. You have to move quickly, and you got to get the stuff in the ground. And once, what we'll do is if it's a large project, I'll have a couple of guys planting, and then I'll just have one or two guys following up, watering right behind them. Nothing goes in the ground without being watered in. It's just the way we do it.
Okay. Richard, we have just about 3 or 4 minutes, and I got to give Gail a couple of minutes to do some closing. So if you can just talk, you briefly mentioned it, what remediation techniques or what is remediation, in the landscape?
Okay. What we do is they're called root collar excavations or a collar correction. And there's two ways you can do it. The simple way to do it is just by hand. What you do is you have to go in, just quickly. If you look at a tree in the woods and you see that nice flare at the base, all the trees in the landscape should look like that. They should look like telephone poles coming up out of the ground. So that's your first clue when you walk onto the site and you see trees in particular, that have that straight trunk coming out of the ground without that flare. So what we'll do is either by hand or with an air spade, we'll go in and loosen up the soil around the base of the tree and, either eliminate any girdling roots that may be happening, any nylon twine that may have been left behind, any cages, anything like that might be, potentially causing a girdling issue. And we can get all that stuff cut back and get the root collars cleaned out. And there's a lot of issues with root collars being, buried under mulch and soil and things like that. Root rot, adventitious roots growing up into the mulch so that there's nothing stabilizing it. Instead of the root systems actually digging down, trying to find moisture and anchoring themselves in the soil. There's a lot of issues, but that's just a quick sort of idea of what we do. But it's a great tool, the air spade. I would recommend a lot of, if guys don't have it, looking into getting it, because not only is it a great tool to have for the benefit of your landscape, but it's also a nice revenue source for a company also.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. It's a great business opportunity once you understand, the methods and the science behind it. It's something you could add to your repertoire as a contractor. I have to ask this question. I'm going to run over a minute or two. Have you found that the plant material that you're getting, particularly the balled and burlap, that when you're getting it from the nursery or from the growers, that they're already somewhat distressed because the soil is already above the root flare in the burlap?
Yes, no question. There was, without mentioning any names, one of the reputable nurseries that I used to get plant material from has unfortunately closed their location in Pennsylvania and moved to another location. And I had started to really get a great rapport with them, and I talked to them about their planting practices and trying to get them to, change their nursery techniques so that when they're cultivating the rows, the soil's not piled up, but before they dig the plant material, pulling all the loose soil off of the tops of the root balls before they dig them with a tree spade. But it's a difficult thing because all the nurseries essentially get their stock from the same places, and unless you go to the nursery and actually physically pick out that plant material yourself, and even then you're rolling the dice because you don't know what's underneath that burlap. Opening every root ball is like Christmas. You never know what you're going to get. It's always always a surprise in there. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that the Nursery Association or Growers Association really have to look at that and not, start us, the landscape contractor that's installing it, start them at a disadvantage. So I guess that'll be another show we could have on. Yep. Richard, our time's up. So I just want to again thank Richard McCoy of Richard McCoy Horticultural Services. Thank you very much for being on the air and joining us on Landscape Live. And Gail's going to, follow up as far as, where somebody could contact you or, reach out to you, as well as your website. So thank you very much for being on the air tonight.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Take care now.
Great.
Okay. It's all yours.
Thanks, Richard. And you can learn more about Richard McCoy by visiting his website at www.mccoyfinegardens.com. And you can also email him at info@mccoyfinegardens.com. Once again, we'd like to thank this month's sponsor, QualiPro. And don't forget to visit FromDesignToBuild.com to learn more about how Jody can help you receive your free trade secrets, participate in our poll, see our What Were They Thinking feature, and become a member today. For radio show sponsorship and advertising, visit www.landscapelive.net. Thank you for listening to tonight's show.
Landscape Live is presented in partnership with Landscape Management, which shares new ideas to inspire and empower lawn care, landscape maintenance, design, build, and irrigation professionals to run more efficient, profitable businesses.
You've been listening to Landscape Live, a radio show dedicated to professional designers and landscape contractors. Join us every week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and listen to interviews with the top professionals in the green industry. We'll see you next week on Landscape Live.